Hi, Michelle. I'm so excited to have you today. You're such a lovely energy. We've already been adjusting height. You tried to be kind to me because I'm only 5'1". We'll see what happens. It's still probably it's a little off, but you were so kind to do that. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good today. It's nice and like sunny here in Minnesota, so I feel like those days you have a little bit more energy naturally.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting morning, but it's been a good one.
Okay, good. I know I forget that you're from Minnesota, and like my only connection to Minnesota is I'm obsessed with Abby Jimenez, the romance author, and she owns this bakery called
Okay.
Nadine's Cakes or something like that. Yes,
She
girl.
owns that?
Yes.
Get out. Okay, so I just went gluten free and I've been told that like they have like one of the best gluten free cakes because Minnesota and gluten free don't go together
No.
at all. And so there's not a lot as much awareness here as you would find, in like LA and places like that. And so, yeah, I've heard that they have some amazing options. So they're over where I grew up actually, and
That's
so I'm trying to head that direction eventually.
okay. Well, you got to. Like they are world renowned. Like I've had friends who used to live out that
Wow.
way send it to me and they're like amazing. And so that's my little like Minnesota connection. That and of course Prince. But like that those are like my
Yes.
two Minnesota connections. So I'm glad
I
it's a
love
nice
that.
day out there. I am so excited to talk to you today because you've been through a journey. Like we know you as one version of yourself. You came to like fame, so to speak, in this one version. And it happened for you overnight. And like who you are then and where you are today are totally different. And we're going to get through that progression. But like, I really am interested in asking women how they cope with their lives changing overnight. And I feel like yours has changed overnight multiple times. And we're going to get to that. But in this iteration, how did you stay grounded when your life changed so dramatically after doing The Bachelor and then again at The Bachelor?
I think it came from my family, my friends, and just having a tight knit group who always supported me and knew who I was. They were the people that would, you go back and don't talk to them for however many months and then jump right back into conversation and they just know like the real you. So I feel like having people like that in my circle supporting me and then just like the values, my parents have always instilled in our family. My dad has had a lot of success. My mom has had a lot of success. They always really challenged my brother, my sister, and I to whatever we do, you're all in. And so I did that with basketball a lot and was able to find success with that, but keep your head on straight as well. And, you know, doesn't matter who you walk into the room and treat everybody the same, regardless of how much money you make, what success you've had. And so that's just kind of been how I've moved. And I respect that a lot in other people who move the same way. So I've tried to stick to it.
It's beautiful because a lot of people do switch up, right? They do change
Mhm.
or they do kind of play, in your case, to the camera or have a strategy or, there's all these things. And I don't think it's necessarily bad to have like an idea of like how you want to present yourself on TV. Like I'm not knocking that. But, there's a difference between
Mhm.
that and being like so calculated that you lose sight of who you are and what you want people to know about you. How did you kind of navigate that piece?
I will say when I first went on, that first show, that was probably like my family's biggest worry of me going on the show, just with you never know what cut you're going to get. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I also am very stubborn and I was like, well, at the end of the day, nobody can make you say something or nobody can make you do something that you don't, want to do in those situations. And so I never fell into peer pressure or anything like that, so I was very confident. I don't care if there's 10 producers asking me to do something, if it's not something that I believe in or that I would do, I'm not gonna do it. So I think kinda having that attitude and really relying on what I believe in and how I would operate in situations, um, and not how other people were operating around me, kind of allowed me to navigate through a lot of that and maintain, who I am on the screen. But I will also say it was hard because it was in the back of your mind of, I think, or my mind anyways, of being portrayed incorrectly. So I think that had me closed off in the beginning. Like I really didn't show like my goofy side or, my humor at times. And I think it was just because I was, like, really unsure about, like, what should I open up with? Or, the people asking you the questions, "Can I really trust that you're telling me something's, that's going on and I'm supposed to respond to it, but like, is that actually what's happening? Is that actually what's going on? You know, because there is a lot of that in reality TV. And there can be twisting of things and twisting of stories. And so it's easy to get caught up in it. And so I will say that at the beginning, I was really scared that I was going to get caught up in it and I was kind of closed off. But I think once the people I was working with got to know me and my true intentions and let them know like who I was and that I wouldn't waver, I think they really respected that. And then I was able to kind of ease into it and become like more vulnerable with talking about like who I am and just allowing it to be. I wish more was shown of those sides, but but yeah, it took a little bit.
And I think it ties into too, like I always say, like there's connections we can make. You know, I will probably never experience. Well, I definitely probably won't experience being on a The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. That
Do
time
you
is
want to?
that's I think that ship has sailed for me. I think like I'm in that middle zone where it's like I'm not golden bachelor age, but I'm definitely not like in my 20s college co-ed. So it's probably not going to happen to me. And more importantly, it's not like going to happen to most people in their lives, right? It's going to be a small set, but you know, still, hey, maybe.
Never say never.
Never say never. But having said that, I do think there's like your story. I think is there's universal to that in the sense that a lot of people are afraid to be vulnerable, and they, especially as a woman of color and a Black woman, like being that strong one, making sure, which I think you did come off as, you know, you were quiet in the show, but you showed like this strength, right? And I think a lot of
Mhm.
women put that on, right? Like it's not that they're not strong, but it's like they put on that front because they're not sure if they're safe, right? I think that's a
Right.
universal truth. They're not sure if people are going to accept the different parts of them. And so I would love to know a little bit about for you a little more about when you may have felt like you had to be this strong one. Even like I think of like the emotional beats in the show, right? Where there's rejection and heartbreak and all those things where you have to be a certain way. Like you want to not be vulnerable. So have you ever felt like being the strong one was exhausting? And then how did you kind of move through that to show those vulnerabilities?
That's a phenomenal question that has so many different sides to it. I think that it was also different from when, you know, you're a contestant and then when you move in and you're like the lead of a show because you are more in charge and in place to, you know, lead the conversations and connect with all these different people. And I really just I didn't fake anything. I think that's like the biggest thing is that I always tried to genuinely connect with someone, um, and not necessarily like lead things on, you know. They can edit, their editing is amazing and they can cut things and make it seem whatever way they want. But I knew that like at the end of the day, I was genuine and I was true to something. Um, but I think probably, like, the discourse around it is I on my season, I did talk about, you know, having to always be, like, the strong Black woman and not being able to, um, be allowed that space to open up. And, you know, like, people you can praise people for it, people tend to praise you, or more so, like, they expect you to be in that role, as I would say. And so it is exhausting. I would say that there's definitely some fatigue with it at times, especially, I mean, if anyone who's paid attention knows everything that's gone on in Minnesota this year. Jack and I live in Minneapolis, so a lot of it, you know, is
Oh,
literally
wow.
right outside our window. And those moments, I think people don't really understand, like the exhaustion, especially like that a Black female feels during those moments. And the pain, the intense empathy, the wanting to stand up, but exhausted and wanting others to stand up for you and wanting to speak your piece and allow that space to speak your piece, but also, why aren't you guys speaking up? Because it's not on us to constantly teach. So I think I'm still finding the balance with that just because you are a lot of times, you know, reacting and dealing to what's going around in the world and it's not easy. I'm very sensitive to those things, I think, because I feel very deeply. And so learning when I need to attempt to disconnect or at least put my phone down, put social media down, the news down, and just protect and take care of my energy as best as I can, because I'm very much still feeling it in those moments. But I don't think it's something I have necessarily figured out because that burnout and that fatigue is there. But when I start to feel it, I do my best job to react and take care of it and, protect that energy in the best way, possible. Um, instead of, just putting my head down and pushing through it because then I get to intense burnout and that's not great either. And that takes a long time to come back from. So,
A lot a long, long time to come back from, and I
yes.
think so many people are listening to this and going, "Yep, yep, yep," because we talk about this so much on this podcast about
Yes.
how to navigate that and how to take care of yourself, participate in community, right? Like, community is so important,
Yeah.
caring about people is so important, and yet there is a moment where it's like, "What is mine to carry? What is everybody else's to carry? How do I stay connected with people and to people without feeling like I'm losing myself, without I'm losing my
Hmm.
compassion? Because you can be so connected, right, that you lose the ability to feel, like you
Help
lose yes,
and
you
feel.
can't help,
Hmm.
right? And what is the kind of activism, like, what is activism now, and what does that look like? And activism is sometimes taking a nap because that's the least that people expect,
Yes.
right? Like, laying down, letting somebody tapping someone else in, saying, "Y'all are up, I'm gonna rest, I'll come back," you know? You can be the
Yep.
reinforcement.
Exactly. Exactly. And then just adding, social media into that adds such a different layer because, even being a public figure in those positions, you have so many messages of like, well, why aren't you saying anything about this? And why aren't you, or why aren't you speaking on this? And really having an understanding of like knowing where I stand, you know, knowing the things like that I speak on because I do want, use my platform to advocate and all those things. But also sometimes there's stuff going on in our personal lives, that we're dealing with as well that we're not on social media and or we're standing up in different ways that I'm not taking out my phone and showing every second. So just having that empathy too and really just connecting with other women who are in the same position as me, I think that's been my saving grace is I have some wonderful friends who do so much for the community and we really make sure to check in on each other and you know protect each other's energy and give reminders about recharging and making sure that we're all taking the time to do that. So I think when you have people checking in on you like that, that can relieve a little bit of that intensity there.
It definitely does, and I hope everyone's listening to that. Like, community is something you fight for and you build,
Yep.
right? And you lean on. It's not just one or the other. It's like you fight for it and you lean on it. And that's why you fight for it. So you have the reinforcements and the backup to be able to do that. And I think the way you
Mhm.
describe that push and pull, I think a lot of people can relate to and is really accurate. And it's because it's true, right? That is how we navigate kind of the world.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like, activism looks very different, and there's a fine line between caring about things and caring in the way that you have the capacity to care, and
Yes.
performative activism, right? Well, I guess I got to do a
Yes.
post. Well, it's like, well, is your heart in it? Like, that matters more.
Right.
Is your
Mhm.
character matching the, like, okay, you put this fantastic speech or whatever, and then we see you 2 posts later, and it's like, well, that doesn't match that
Oh,
person.
it's so uncomfortable, and it's just, like, so uncomfortable to go from especially, as, like, we're seeing things happening and going out, and there's times where there are, like, marches going on and, like, we'll get to it, but, had been diagnosed with, POTS and everything, so there's times where, like, I haven't been up and well and being able to move, and, I'm carrying that guilt that I can't be out there walking, and marching, but doing everything that I can from where I am at, and just having to, fend off so many people who are like, "Well, why aren't you out there marching right now?" And it's just, yeah, I hope that people start to like understand that it can look so different, like you said, in so many different ways. And just because it's not posted does not mean it's not happening. And I think that's why you just really have to get to know that true person and their intentions and where they're putting their energy. And a lot of that comes from getting out in the community yourself. So,
Yeah, oh, yeah, start with you. How about we start with that? Start with you, and also, the truth is you don't owe anybody anything, and I
exactly.
think that seems to be that needs to be said more often. It's like being a good human being is a contract you make with yourself, if you're a spiritual person, a higher power, whatever, but it's not with like user 2543 on Instagram. Like, that is not the
Right.
agreement, right? Like, the agreement is
Mhm.
with yourself, your community, and most importantly, again, yourself. And so showing up how you feel best, that's what I talk about at Black Girl Burnout. It's like people showing up
Yep.
in the way that's authentic to them no matter what. And it's not contained in a moment, right? This thing happens.
Right.
It's contained in a lifestyle. Like, it's how you move through the world because there will be no shortage of moments to step in and make a statement on. And if you did that, you'd be making statements 24/7, 365 days a year.
So many times a day.
And it's not then you can't actually do anything. And more importantly, you can't live a life, which is fair to wanna do. That's fair. You
Right.
should be able to live your life,
Yeah.
you know? And to your point too, this is where we were going is we don't know what's going on in people's lives at any moment, and real things are happening in people's lives all the time. And for you, you were diagnosed with POTS and you've been open about it. And so
Mhm.
like the first micro question for you is just explain for the audience what POTS is because they may not be familiar. Like we've heard it, but we don't know what it is. So could you explain it for us for
Yeah.
a little bit?
So POTS is in underlying disorder. It's I kind of explain it as dysautonomia is like an umbrella term, and underneath it you have all of these different disorders that are basically dysfunctions in the autonomic nervous system. And so with POTS, a lot that I deal with is, my nervous system is almost misfiring with, sending signals. So when you think about like autonomic, it's everything that your body automatically does. So you are hot and your body starts to sweat. You're nervous or emotions happen and your heart starts beating fast or you get out of breath when you're working out and all those things. And when it's misfiring, it's sending the incorrect signal, meaning that my heart will start beating super, super fast when I'm sitting down on the couch. Or maybe if I'm laying down, or when I stand up, my blood pressure drops. There's not enough blood going to your brain. And so, like, you can lose your vision. Some people pass out. Luckily, knock on wood, luckily, I have not had that symptom. I think I've had every other symptom, but it's just this whole range of symptoms that almost take over your entire life and deep fatigue, brain fog, the list goes on. And so it's things that you can't necessarily control. And I think the biggest thing that I've been doing is really like attacking the nervous system and trying to rewire that so that we do send the correct signals so that we can, hopefully get back to functioning and living a normal lifestyle for me. But it's something that just can completely take over people's lives and it pops up for many different reasons. And a lot of times under that dysautonomia umbrella, people have multiple different forms of it. And so they have POTS, but then there's also other disorders that they can, sprinkle in and have a touch of this and have a touch of this. So it's just, there can be a lot of things going on and it's really difficult to figure out. And I think the biggest thing is it's invisible. And so, can look like this and I look like I feel good and, you show up and give as much energy as you possibly can, but the pain, the bone deep fatigue that you can feel, and you just have really limited energy at times, and it can get pretty scary. And so, I think that's the hardest part is that people don't see what happens before, what happens after when you push it too far, and how your life really can change when you're in flare ups and dealing with this.
Yeah, we don't talk enough about chronic illness, and particularly among Black women, because there's a high amount of immune diseases in Black women, right? Maybe not POTS, but
Mhm.
pick one. There's a lot, and a lot of Black
Yep.
women are dealing with multiple versions, and they're all invisible, right? They're all, for the most part,
Yep.
invisible until the symptoms happen, and so the temptation is to kind of keep pushing, keep showing up. For years people will talk about I had this, but I showed up, I never changed, and they're sicker for it, right? They get in their 40s and 50s and
Push
more,
through.
and they
Yep.
they pay for it later, right? Because your body can only take so much. And so thank you for
Yep.
explaining what it is. And then I want to know, like, how did that change your relationship with rest, with energy, with taking care of yourself as someone you're young, like you're on the go. You've been doing a lot of things. Like how did you
Yeah.
how did you change your relationship to those things?
I think it probably just changed. Like when I say just changed, like in the last like month or two, really have started to get a grasp on how my energy or approaching my energy has changed. And so before, I mean, I was a college athlete, played Division 1 basketball. It was all about pushing through, right? You're injured, you play injured. You have, had the stomach flu, you push through that and play through the stomach flu. You push through, and that's where your strength is shown, is, pushing through. And that's all I knew. And I think I got into teaching, and with teaching, it's really hard to call out sick when you're teaching because you have to write all the subplans. You have to teach someone who's never been in your classroom how your classroom runs, a bunch of children, a bunch of fifth graders, whatever age you're teaching. And it takes hours to write those subplans. So a lot of times, even with teachers, like we have to go to school sick. We don't want to, but either our sub position isn't filled and you have to show up, or just the work that it takes to create the ability to take a day off is not really like a day off or a day sick. So you always push through. And I that was literally what I knew, is to push through. And I could be going through some really tough times, and I pushed through a lot. And I realized with this is pushing through is not strength here, especially when you have limited energy. And so, what started happening is every time I pushed through and just kept going and going, I would just get sicker and sicker. And it just continued to go on. And at one point, I realized, okay, wow, I'm in like really intense burnout. And so I need to sit down and rest. But it's not like you can just do like a spa weekend and then your burnout is gone. You have to be so intentional about your rest, about your boundaries, and it applies to so many different spaces in your life. And so, look, rest, I can be sitting down on the couch, but if I'm sitting on the couch and I'm on my phone and I'm on social media, emotionally, I'm like, am I really resting? Like doom scrolling and what that does to the mind at times. But at times it can take your mind off things. So like it's all about balance. And I used to go work out really hard to release that stress. And I think that's like a healthy outlet. But right now, I'm not able to do that. And if I go and push through my workouts, I'm down, wiped out for like a week to 2 weeks because my body's like, we can't handle that right now. We need to focus on rebuilding the foundation. And so my workouts are walks, and I should be breathing through my nose. Shouldn't be breathing through my mouth. Once I'm breathing heavy through my mouth, like I know I need to stop, which is so crazy because I used to just gas it, sprint on the treadmill, lift up all the heavy weights, and I would love to be able to get back to that. But right now, when you're retraining things and building things back up, it's really like building that trust again with your body and not pushing to burnout and showing myself it's okay to end the day with energy in your tank. In fact, you want to do that. Whereas if I still had energy, I needed to be up doing something, whether it was cleaning, doing the dishes, taking on a different project. I never sat down. I never would slow down. And so now I'm definitely paying for it. And so I'm really learning what rest actually means. And it's healthy to be bored at times. And when you're resting, you can't be thinking about things that are making you feel bad for sitting down. If you're sitting down and feeling guilty about it, you're not recharging. That's been a hard one to learn. I still struggle with that, but it's just really learning those boundaries of, your success or like what you achieve in a day doesn't control the value of who you are as a human. And that's been like mind blowing to learn once it finally resonated a little bit, because it would be really hard to not be able to get as much done in a day. And I'm not like, what am I doing with my life if I can't achieve this and get my to do list done? And I'm like, where did that come from? you
Intergenerational
know?
trauma, and
Ugh. Yeah. I
it did,
say it like I don't know where it came from, like, don't talk about it every week,
but it
as
does.
I'm working on it.
Yes, but what's so beautiful about what you said is, 1 everybody can relate to that. Again, now we may not be D1 athletes, former D1 athletes, but we do understand the need to push through, the feeling
Mhm.
guilty if that like leave it all out there. If there's anything left in the tank, well, you've got to then expend that. And then how you are navigating that, right? How you are doing that with you're getting curious. Like you just laid out a roadmap, right? You ask questions like, okay, I'm resting, but is it
Mhm.
really restful if I have my phone in my hands and I'm doom scrolling, right? That's question number 1, right? Okay, I need to work out. It's a little different than I used to. I now have to ask myself, if I push myself, am I going to pay for this later? Like first just getting curious. And then the
Yeah.
bigger mindset shift is permission to just have a gentle life. And I just don't know a lot of Black women who start with, like, I'm pursuing having a gentle life. Like this, I don't need an achievement list or a checklist. I just want to feel soft. And that is a radical shift that most of us don't do, including myself, until we hit the wall with our health. Like that's when we're like, oh, we don't have a choice. Right. But you're
Yeah, your
learning.
body's like, "Sit down."
Sit down. You're done. That was cute.
Mhm.
It's over now, right?
You're done.
So we're learning it maybe like we didn't choose the lesson in this manner, but you're still learning it and in a way
Yeah.
that you can rehab your body. You can go back, but you're going to go back a different way, right? Like you're going to go back with these new habits, with asking the question, like just because I have gas in the tank, wouldn't it be nice to just go to bed not exhausted? How about we just go to bed because we're tired? Wouldn't that be great?
Right.
So I really
Right.
love that. And you talked a little bit about boundaries. And I know you care deeply about balancing like your boundaries. So you've done so much. Like you have done so much and are still doing so much, right? You have your foundation, which I want you to talk about, which focuses on supporting youth and creating opportunities. Like I want to talk you to talk a little bit about that and then I want to come back to the boundaries conversation because you've got
Mhm.
so many things going on. You've got health, you're a public figure, you've got your foundation, you've got your job. Like there's things that you are doing and I want to come back to boundaries, but first, I wanna take a slight detour because 'cause you're doing so much even though you're focusing on rest. You work with young girls, right? I want you to tell me a little bit about your foundation, and then I wanna tell you, like, what do you think, what do you love about that work, and what do you think people, like, young girls need to hear right now?
I think so. I started the Michelle Young Foundation 2 years, I wanna say. Well, I started working on it, like, 2 years after I got out of the classroom, just because I was trying to figure out what do I want. What do I wanna do? What do I wanna do with my time? I'm somebody who I really think a lot of us seek purpose. Why are we here? What are we meant to do? And I had never been in that position where I had to soul search for what I wanted to do. I always had basketball that was there. That was a huge passion of mine, sacrificing everything, to get to go play Division 1 basketball on a full ride scholarship. And I got there and I did that. And then afterwards, I had this huge teaching passion that I was working on, and then I got to be a teacher and eventually was going to go into administration. And then you hit burnout and you're like, now what? Because like my passion, everything I love to do is like no longer there anymore. I still love making an impact, but going into the classroom every single day, burnt out, like you can't give anything. You're exhausted. And frankly, with just how the education system is going, you're not set up to be successful at all. And I think with that, really wanting to lean into something that would allow me to have an impact because I needed that to be fulfilled. I feel like I was looking at a round of, okay, well, what things do I like? Well, I really like fashion. I really like beauty. I love, I love traveling. I love all these different things. But what things, if I took it away, would I maybe not feel like myself? And I think the thing with that was like making an impact somehow. And for now, it's definitely with the youth and being able to provide different opportunities. Um, I was able to play basketball at a really high level, and that taught me like more than schooling did. And the different lessons you learn from being on a team and on the court, and when you have coaches who really connect like basketball and your life together, it can do some really amazing things. And being able to provide those opportunities for students who and youth who don't have that and don't have access to that. I think that's a really big thing because especially after COVID coming back, all of the learning gaps that we were seeing. Yes, some of it was because, they weren't able to get their homework done, because they were taking care of like younger siblings and things like that. But a big piece of it is the opportunity and what they have, you know, accessibility to. And everything happened after the school day that our other, their peers were going to museums and, going to play sports and having all of these different experiences. And our youth that was really struggling wasn't having those experiences. And that's where the, brain really grows, and how those youth, their minds really are able to mold, is providing those opportunities. And so I think going directly to that, because I think having those opportunities, it can, make up for a lot of um, missed things that happen just in the education system by itself. We'll package that over there because of all the issues with the education system. But it fails a lot of our youth, especially our underprivileged youth. So I think that's where I really wanted to target, my first few projects, and been able to work with that. And then also just helping teachers, the people who are helping those youth as well and supporting them, because I myself, um, am a result of burnout, and that's really difficult as well. So we need amazing people to be able to stay in the classroom, but they need to be respected, and they need to be well equipped and set up for success and supported. And I think that's a really big thing too. So with the foundation, we've just been able to do a little bit of everything, and spread the love with all of it where we can.
It's so thoughtful because again, the universal truth that you are circling around, which is like so many people have had burnout and they think that they're going to lose purpose, and they're like, what do I do after? For me, black girl burnout as a
Yes.
result, I'm a therapist. It was a result of my burnout. I was like, what do I want people to know, even though I'm not in direct practice this very second? What
Hmm.
can I do? Because I couldn't do that anymore at that moment. And then you do have a moment of loss, like where you're just like, who am I if I'm not this thing that I was really excited about and super passionate about and wanted to keep doing? And you lose a piece of that. And so you found a way to find meaning through, it doesn't mean it's the end of a journey. It just changes. Finding
Right.
impact and making a difference, that is not going to change. It may be packaged different. And that's what this foundation does. It's a way for you to still connect to the passions of extracurricular and sports and culture and
Hmm.
connections and the teaching piece, right? About that you loved being a
Yeah.
teacher. It's like it puts it all into one in a way that maybe you couldn't have done, to be fair, if you just stuck to the one thing and didn't go
Hmm.
beyond it. So I think that's really beautiful. And it still requires back to my boundaries question, it still requires a measure of boundaries. So it's like,
Hmm.
because you've changed and life has been so different for you, and you have a public persona, you have a foundation, like you're wearing a lot of hats during the day. How are
Yeah.
you balancing that? And how are you creating those kinds of boundaries to make sure you're successful still?
Yeah, I think so. I always wanted to be doing so many things at one time, and a lot of ideas pop in my head, and I want to, get to it right away and just put everything into that. But I was spreading myself very thin, and so I think with the foundation, that is still there, and those things are still being worked towards, and we have our foundation goals and all those things. But I can't put all into that until I'm healthy. And so, like you said, you kind of package things differently. I really learned to look at it, okay, well, I feel like I'm naturally a teacher. That doesn't mean like when I walk in a room, like I know everything, I'm also like love learning, but I've kind of been forced to learn a lot about, the nervous system and just women and women's health and just everything around that. And where there are a lot of different holes, and be able to use my social media platform to have like a space for people to feel seen and heard, because there's not a lot of people who are in, um, a lot of public figures, I guess, who are talking about chronic illness or invisible illness. And it's, you can see like red carpets and movie premieres and all these crazy things. And for a while I honestly wasn't posting. because I felt like I don't have anything to post. Like I'm literally spending my day healing in doctor's appointments and IVs and doing all of these things and figuring out what's going on with my body, but I kind of felt like a fraud at one point, and I'm like, I have to just be honest and live my life honestly. And so that's where I started being very open about what I was going through, and I was very scared to do it. And once I started that, it like weight lifted off my shoulders. And it kind of resonated with me of like, okay, like here my classroom is shifting a little bit again. And it's really to just share my story, whether that's, I do a little bit of motivational speaking too, and that's another hat I wear. And for a little while, I was going to all these places and doing all these, big motivational speeches. And now it's very much like my platform and sharing my story and connecting with a lot of people. And I just didn't realize that how many people that would touch and help, and how many things I found for myself to be able to get, on the path to getting healthier because of things other people have brought to my attention once I was, honest about what I was going through. So I think, just really not putting like a label on myself of this is like the only thing that I can do and everything has to be put into it now, but allowing myself to the space to adjust, and to slow things down if I need to speed up and put focus in another area and vice versa. And I think that's been allowing myself to do that guilt free. No matter what other people think I should be doing. There's people who still think I should be in the classroom and tell me to go back to the classroom like constantly in my DMs. And it's just, I wouldn't be able to teach. If you want to send me back to the classroom, like good luck. I don't. I'm out of the breath walking to the fridge some days still. So like I don't know why that feels like a good fit, but it's just people just talk and say things, and I just not taking that to heart, but truly just sharing my story and using that space as social media to be my classroom a little bit at times. I think is where I've found a lot of comfort, um, or it's just kind of like, oh, like there's like the teacher in Michelle again. She's starting to pop up a little bit, as I'm even like editing reels and things like that. So it's
I
been different,
I love
but
that. I love that, and it's still centered around taking care of yourself. Like, you're changing your
yeah.
life, but you're not changing who you are, and that's like I just have 2 more questions for you, and one of them is like, what about Michelle has stayed the same, and what parts of you are you determined to stay the same as your platform changes, you go in new versions of yourself, life is different, like, you've done all these things. What has stayed the same, and what are you determined to keep the same? That's question number 1.
My husband and I actually had this conversation, like last week. Oddly, we were just talking about things, and I had had like a series of really hard days through a flare, and I think what's the biggest thing that's the same is just I want to say like my mind, but not my mind. Like it has grown, and I've learned like a lot of things, but how much I like deeply care about things and my willingness and drive to I don't want to say fix not fix something because you can't always fix everything. But no matter what it is that I'm doing, I will always put like my heart and soul into it. And literally all in. And I think that's really what is still there is that it's now about something that I never thought I would be dealing with and didn't see coming. But I've always been able to do that and go all in, and I actually like enjoy learning about it. So it's not like I'm miserably, researching things and reading things, and I'm not doing it to a point where it's like unhealthy. I know when to put, I'm not on WebMD and looking up symptoms and things like that anymore. But I've just really enjoyed throwing myself into okay, like wellness and like meals and the body and all these different things. Were just so different than what I originally thought they were when I was even in like school, playing basketball, and you learn about health and fitness and all that stuff. And I'm like, wow, it's actually like a lot different than I was taught. So learning and always have been able to find like the silver lining, maybe to a fault, but I think that with this, I was go, 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 go all the time, and it was all about the achievements and whatever that was. And I would put everything in to get to that achievement. I would sacrifice so many different things, but I realized I like wasn't living in the moment. And it was like on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing. So I think now I really do I've learned to live in the moment, and I've had to slow things down so much, and life got so hard that I had to find the small wins. And I think that's something that was always there, is that when things got really tough, I would always find something to be proud of myself for, and like have that self-talk of like, okay, we got this. Like we're gonna get through this. Maybe that's stubbornness too. I'm still stubborn, but in the good way of like, I'm gonna figure this out. I'm gonna figure out how to get through this. And part of me is like not accepting, like accepting that my life is different right now, but not saying that it believing that I'm can get myself to a point where I'm able to have the life that I want. And maybe the life that I want has changed as well. That's maybe part of it too. So just noticing the small wins even through the really difficult times, and being able to celebrate those things and be genuinely happy about those things, I think has caught my attention that it's very much still there.
And it's a great way to live, and it's what's gonna be there forever, like, those are 2
Yeah,
things to wanna bring with you, and it's okay to be all in, just not at the cost of yourself anymore, and now you realize that, right? Like,
exactly. I love the way that you put that. Yes.
I'm all in, I'm just not dying in the process to do it,
Yeah,
right?
I'm all in for me and
For
for like a quality life
I
and for a
love that.
healthy life
Y
and for a balanced life.
I love that.
And
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly, and now a successful day is a restful one, and it's not gonna be measured by necessarily how many followers you have or if people love everything you're doing, but it's by the moments, those small moments, the silver linings, the small wins, and that leads to bigger success, by the way. Like, once you start counting the small ones, the big ones, they can't help but follow. So I love it. I love it. Last question for you. I ask everybody
Yes.
this. What brings you joy and how do you protect it?
Oh, a lot of things bring me joy, but I think what really has brought me joy through this is just intentional connections, and really being present with the people that are around me. I mean, phones are such a big thing nowadays. Social media is such a big thing. We're at the dinner table and like I know I do it, but like take a picture of the food and the phone eats first, and we all like joke about that to a certain extent. But really just how many of us live and aren't living in the present day and aren't feeling that. And I used to be like that. And now I'm forced to really feel what's going on. But I think that is like such a beautiful thing, is to be able to be present and intentional. And I think my relationships have just gotten so much deeper because of that intentional time. And when we're not able to see your friends or family as often because you're not feeling well, that time that you are able to spend with them, it really does become so much more important. And you're able to see like how beautiful things really are when, you have access to everything. Things can kind of become mundane and all of that, even if you have gratitude. So I just think that right now things slowed down so much to a point where I was able to like find the beauty in things, again, in the small things, and I really appreciate that. So I think that's what's been bringing me a lot of joy.
I love that. And joy brings more joy, right? Like, so it's like you probably
Exactly.
have better conversations now that you're more intentional. You probably meet even more like amazing people as you just attract it because that's where you are now. And so now everybody tries to find you. So I love that. Michelle, it's been a delight chatting with you. How can people continue to connect with you, find you? Where can we continue to follow you on your journey?
Yes, everything's on Instagram with just Michelle Young, 2 L's in Michelle, and same thing with TikTok, but Instagram has been mostly where I've been posting my story and everything that I've been going through on a day-to-day, and where I've been connecting with people the most.
All right. Well, give you a follow. You are definitely worth it. This has been a fantastic conversation. You are like a bright, beautiful spirit. I'm so glad you
Oh,
came
thank
on
you.
the podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.